Welcome to the first, and maybe last, depending on how well this goes, episode of the Versus series, where we compare great series from similar franchises and similar or different mediums just cause we can. Today we'll be comparing the Fate series with the Final Fantasy series. The former is the bizarre media franchise that spawned from one visual novel, and the latter started with a simple game series that spawned into a bizarre franchise that's almost too big to fail.
What in the hell?
Almost. But before we start, let's set up some ground rules. Number 1. This video takes into account both series being compared in their entirety. This means sequels, spin-off, and standalone titles under a series will be bundled up together for comparison's sake. Number 2. This video aims to be as objective as possible. Number 3. When comparing under each category, we use the rules and knowledge established by each franchise or series and nothing more. Number 4. Comparisons won't be too in-depth unless actually necessary. And number 5. Remember that this is just a video and nothing matters. Now for the categories. We have genre/engagement elements. This includes gameplay mechanics and engagement elements, fantasy, power scaling, sci-fi, non-fiction, and so much more. Visuals. This includes effects, design, art direction, and aesthetic. Characters. Are they fleshed out, important to the narrative, likable? Plot and storyline. This includes depth, engagement, stakes, world design, world building, and inspirations. And finally, soundtrack and sound design. This includes sound effects, songs, and just the overall feels. Got it? Cool. Now that we have the boring stuff out of the way, let's get to it. Fate and Final Fantasy are two huge franchises that have been around for quite some time now. With several media series and spin-offs spawning from the original creations, we've since been blessed with fantastic narrative, impeccable world building, amazing characters, and so much more. And because of this, it's no surprise that both franchises has lasted as long as they have. However, each great franchise is supported by great stories, and these two have amazing stories to tell. The Fate franchise spawns several series and stories of different genres spanning various anime, light novels, manga, and games, all interconnected through a central premise. Most of these media stem from the original visual novel, as most of the stories in the series were made from the many routes in the novel. The Fate franchise categorizes characters into masters and their servants who help them achieve their goal of winning the Holy Grail War and get any wish they want granted by fighting other masters and servants. Each servant is categorized under a class that defines their combat style. Classes include Assassin, Archer, Lancer, Rider, Caster, Berserker, and Saber, and each servant is a notable historical figure. Masters in this world are often mages who use various magic spells for various reasons. The franchise sports several separate yet interconnected series, each following several protagonists and their journey with their servants. These notably include Shiro Emiya's journey in Fate's Stay Night and his first involvement in the Holy Grail War, where he meets many of the franchise's beloved characters. Fate Zero is a fantastic prequel that gives us way more depth and background to many characters and their story previously not covered in Fate's Stay Night, and Faith Apocrypha is a separate series that diverges from the main timeline and introduces a parallel Holy Grail War involving two factions, Red and Black, each with their own set of masters and servants. And these are just some of the most notable popular series. They feature great stories and fantasy elements and crazy hot waifus and husbandos. However, it's worth noting that these three series are almost objectively the best the franchise offers, at least narratively, as the others pale in comparison to live up to them. They're either made for fan service to buy merchandise or are just not as good in how the prior three creates hype moments, introduce awesome characters, or have fleshed out stories. Then we have the Final Fantasy series, which honestly is almost an unfair comparison as there are literally over 16 titles under the franchise, and that's besides all the standalone stuff, spin-offs, and other media. Regardless, it's not a secret that the franchise has banger stories. Final Fantasy VI follows the sorceress and an awesome cast of characters in a steampunk-inspired world ruled by the evil Emperor Gustav. 7 follows Cloud Strife and the members of Avalanche who fight against the evil Shinra Corps, and there's also an angry, sexy man with a large sword. 10 follows Titus, a blitzball player from the futuristic city of Zanarkand. He finds himself transported to the world of Spyro and joins a group of guardians in a quest to defeat the monstrous entity known as Sin. He also has a cute laugh. 16 follows Clive, a man fueled by hate, vengeance, and retribution. His family is guarded by a rival kingdom and the world is being poisoned by the mother crystals. And of course, the game follows his journey in destroying them. Also, this entry is notably the first to show a main character getting laid. All that said, Final Fantasy noticeably has more impactful stories, amazing characters, and an overall in-depth world, making it hard to argue that it earns this point and wins the category. However, a good story isn't the most important thing for a series, at least not for these series. Thankfully, they offer several other great features that engage the audience. Ever since the Final Fantasy series launched in the 90s, it has allowed players to fulfill their RPG dreams with a variety of magic and physical abilities. While these physical abilities are kinda straightforward and kinda boring, as you're either using a sword, a gun, a scepter, or your fists, there are instances where some gear gives you additional powers, additional abilities, and resistances, like limit breaks and overdrives, but they're rarely the focus of combat, and that's because the magic system is actually where the excitement and depth come into play in each game. The franchise sports iconic systems like 7 and 8 materia and magicite systems that let you use a variety of magic spells, from the tiny fireball to the largest tornadoes and ice blocks. And of course, the peak of combat are the several summons across the franchise. Summons take inspiration from many mythologies and deities. Several staples include Shiva, the sexy ice goddess, a major deity associated with destruction and renewal in Hinduism. Bahamut, the powerful dragon summon derived from the Arabian mythology creature. Ifrit, the fire demon derived from the Middle Eastern culture. Odin, the chief of the Norse gods, and so much more. Many of these summons have appeared throughout the franchise and all come in many forms with each game. These summons are a big deal in each game, as their appearance always calls for excitement and turns the tide of each battle. Overall, while Final Fantasy has rich and consistent abilities and power scaling elements, they are carried by the summon system. On the other hand, we have the Fate franchise, and oh boy, is there a lot to talk about. The Fate franchise famously has masters and servants. Each servant is categorized under each class. Masters in this world are often mages who use magic spells, and this magic system is noticeably a lot more fleshed out. We got mystic codes, which are basically like magic artifacts and items, mana circuits, which mages use to channel magic, command spells, which masters use to forcibly command servants, mana transfer, and of course the reality marvel, a high-level magecraft ability that creates a field where the user can bend reality according to their will. And man, that's just on the master side. Servants have your standard combat skills, which include martial arts, swordsmanship, and other combat techniques. Then there's cool class abilities, which include mana burst, a skill that enhances servants' abilities, divine constructs, powerful weapons and ornaments often wielded by servants, and of course the noble phantasm. Like Final Fantasy summons, a noble phantasm is a servant's trump card. They are magnificent, grandiose abilities that can be used to turn the tide of battles, and as such, it's no surprise they often keep these cards close to their chests. But when they're finally revealed, they're always something to be excited about. So, with all that said, I think it's fair to conclude that the Fate series clearly has this category down. But what's a good series without great characters? Waifus, husbandos, thirst traps, and those you wanna tap. Luckily, both series feature amazing characters who carry the weight and shift the momentum of their respective shows. Characters you relate to, want to cheer on, ones that grab your attention whenever they're on screen, and villains that are so charismatic you forget that they are genocidal maniacs. Honestly, this category is tough, as both series have amazing characters that fit every category I just mentioned. On Final Fantasy's hero side, we have characters like Aerith, Tifa, Zack, Balthier, and even the meme machine himself, Jack Garland.
Looks like chaos has been waiting for us.
Are you chaos?
Chaos.
Characters who are just beloved for everything that they are, have complex attributes and depth, but still go through character progression and narrative arcs in which we visibly see them grow as people. Some characters that go through this especially include Lightning, the aloof cool girl with some baggage, turned one of the best characters in the series, and Terra, the original cool girl with some baggage who joins a bunch of rebels and grows from it. My personal favorite, of course, is Noctis, a bratty teen whose journey forces him to go through trials and tribulations, allowing him to learn the value of his family, kingdom, and friends. And you know another thing the series has? Amazing villains. We all first think of the titanic turbulent twink himself, Sephiroth. But the franchise has several great villains who push the characters to their absolute limits, making for an overall engaging experience. And then we have the Fate franchise, which is quite frankly carried by nothing but its characters, many of whom are featured in almost every installment but are never the same with each entry, as like you and me, they're always growing and changing. On the hero side, and I say this begrudgingly, we have Emmy and Archer, two complex characters with linked destinies, even if they are just a bunch of dumbasses. Saber, the arbiter and arbiter of justice and righteousness, regarded as the queen of the franchise, with all the flavors you can hope for, even though she's supposed to be a dude. Astolfo, the character who is the most thirst after, that looks like a chick but is actually a dude. Ryder, a gigachad that's hard not to like, and is perhaps one of the best characters you'll see in any media. And then we have the complex characters like Kiritsugu, who you'd be hard pressed to fit any character archetype. Not only does he have an unfortunate origin, but his mere presence in the series leaves a significant impact on all other characters with both his heinous and saintly acts that prove that not all actions are black and white. And don't let me start on the villains because they're all just as important, if not more so, than the protagonists. We have characters like Gilgamesh, the enigmatic king of heroes, who stands as a testament and towering figure of complexity and contradiction. While he may seem like a massive douchebag, which he is, his actions are still tempered by profound wisdom, and he embodies the duality of greatness and hubris, which makes him a highly complex anti-hero. Kirie Kotomine is another great villain, but on the other end of the spectrum, as his strengths lie in pure villainy. And then we have characters like Castor, who's, well,
the tantalizing flavor of fresh terror and bloody death.
You wouldn't have to suffer if you simply gave in and submit.
What is it you're doing, Castor?
overall, there may be significantly more characters in the Final Fantasy series compared to Fate, but it all comes down to quality versus quantity. While Final Fantasy features several iconic and amazing characters, the best of them are mostly considered to be from Final Fantasy VII, as many of the characters from the other games, except the ones I mentioned earlier, fail to compete with them. And while you can say the same for the Fate series, as Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night carries the series in this category, the hard hitters from the Fate series just about outmatch the heavy hitters of Final Fantasy, at least when it comes to character complexity, depth, growth, legacy, and fan favorites. With all that said, it would be disingenuous not to give the point to the Fate series in this category. When comparing visuals, there are several things to take into consideration. We have aesthetics, animation, character designs and models, visual effects, and overall art direction. The Final Fantasy series is no slouch in any of these categories. Even since the Pixel days, the series has been known for its great visual elements such as great backgrounds and picturesque levels. This eventually evolved into beautifully rendered, pretty 3D models which we have now. Today, the series excels in great backgrounds and visual effects that will make any animation studio have a heart attack. However, in terms of character designs, animations, and overall aesthetic, it doesn't really do anything different, at least compared to Fate, because by God does this series knock it out of the park in every way. Fucking fantastic animation thanks to Taxi Vedi Daddy Uforobu, excellent backgrounds, amazing character designs that awaken things in you. I mean, just look at this, and this. Not that, actually, don't know how that got in there. And a lot of porn. So all in all, if you know anything about the Fate series, or you know are not blind, then you know that the Fate series easily gets this point. And finally, we all love bangers, right? Well, Fate fans know a thing or two about bangers, as the series has had several across its many media. A lot of these can be heard during epic moments in games and anime, and in many openings and endings. A lot of them are also iconic and evoke all the feels, and the ones without lyrics are excellently orchestrated. However, many of them are also unforgettable, and are only impactful to the scenes that are added to and not outside. But the statement couldn't be more wrong for Final Fantasy. It's hard for a series as long running as this to not have amazing songs, and that's why it does have so many amazing songs. Many of them don't even need to have lyrics for them to slap harder than my mom in her 30s. I mean, just listen to this. Or this. Or this if you're nasty. So, enough said, right? Final Fantasy bodies this category and it's not even close. And there we have it, folks. We've tallied the results, taking everything we can into consideration, and crunched the numbers, resulting in your sole victor and the better series being objectively the Fate series. Who would have thought? But what do you think? Have different thoughts and opinions? Well, let me know down below, and be sure to tell me what 2 series you think should compete next. If you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.